All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And you know what, Zach? Before we hit the record button, I totally spaced off and forgot to ask you how you pronounce your last name. And so, how do you pronounce your last name, Zach?
Yeah, it's Schleien.
Flying. Okay, so Zach Flying, and you know, first of all, Zach, thanks so much for taking the time to be here and to have this conversation today. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate you setting aside the time to do this. And
For sure.
uh, I want to, give a shout out to the folks at the podcast guest platform. Those guys are doing some amazing work over there. You and I wouldn't even be talking today if it weren't for them, the work they do, and the role that they've played in this. And I am really excited to have this conversation with you, Zach, today around this topic of relationships. And what I want to do is just kind of start off by turning it over to you so we can set a little bit of context and let the listeners know a little bit about you. So we'll talk about what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work that you do and the impact you're making, and also give us some backstory into how you got here and how'd you get here, and we'll start there, Zach.
Great. Well, again, thanks so much for having me on, Kevin. So I run a video speed dating app called Filteroff. We also offer matchmaking services at Filteroff as well.
Okay.
We serve singles that are looking for something more serious, whether it's relationship minded or marriage minded. When it comes to the matchmaking pillar of our company, that definitely caters to someone extremely serious as well, given the premium uh, offering being paired with the matchmaker. So I'll tell you a little bit about the backstory of Filter Off.
Yeah.
I, when as a avid online dater, using all the traditional swipe apps, I would quickly notice that I would get onto these dates, and oftentimes the matches didn't really represent the profile,
Okay.
or we just didn't have chemistry. And it was really frustrating getting on these in-person dates where it just didn't really work out too well. So what I started doing beforehand, I would ask my upcoming dates if they'd be open to video chatting. This was probably like 8, 10 years ago, so quite
Okay.
a while back.
Okay.
Most thought it was very weird to video chat with a complete stranger. I would say half of them, though, were open to a phone call. And then the other half of that, were open to a video chat.
Okay.
So, but the ones that were open to a phone call, that was better than just texting. Video chatting was the best, though. And that's really what gave me this idea. I was like, wow, when I was able to video chat with my matches, I was like, wow, I could see if we're attracted to one another. I could see if we have chemistry with one another, if the person is really kind of what their profile represents. And and then that first in-person meet almost felt like a second date. We already had that connection over video.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's really what had me launch Filter Off, or the inspiration behind it. It was really the app that I always wanted to use, using a medium that was much more authentic and really allowed you to get to know the person and not just the profile. So we launched Filter Off prior to the pandemic in
Okay.
January 2020. The pandemic hit, and we ended up getting lots of traction, and we got covered on the New York Times as well as the BBC, and it really just blew up overnight. And from there, about a year later, we ended up fundraising. We were successful. We raised about $2.5 million, and we continued to grow Filter Off. And then more recently, a few months back, we launched a premium matchmaking service to just add in the ability for singles to have a very curated experience to find love.
Okay. So what does that matchmaking service look like, Zach? How do you guys go about doing that?
Yeah. So the matchmaking service, you apply and we interview you to see if we think you are a good fit for the service. If you are a good fit, you get paired with a matchmaker, a human
Okay.
matchmaker who starts with a video intake call to learn about who you are, your preferences, any sort of deal breakers, so we can help you find your soulmate. And typically, people that join the service are looking for something very serious. Once we learn about you, we start sending you curated matches. So every day you'll get about 7 curated matches, and you would indicate whether you're interested in them or not. If you're interested, our matchmaker reaches out to them on your behalf. So the
Okay.
matchmaker texts them, emails them, and will actually eventually call them. So you really stand out. You don't have to be reliant on an app or push notifications or just the competition that are on these apps. It goes right to their phone as a way to see if they may be interested. If they are interested, the matchmaker then will vet them. So this is really interesting. The matchmaker will ask some questions that are important to you. So this allows you to be aligned with this person if you meet them. So if they are not a fit, we won't send them your way. But if they are a good fit based off of the vetting criteria, we will then send them your photo and bio. And if the match is interested in you, the matchmaker will then help coordinate a video date. So the matchmaker will ask the client their upcoming availability, and the matchmaker will work with the match to align on calendars, and they will set you up on a 10-minute video speed date in the Filteroff app.
Okay.
And once you go on that video speed date, there's different icebreaker games. So it's fun and interactive. And once the video date concludes, you could say if you like them or not. And if it's a match, if you both like one another, you could then message or video chat again with the goal that you'll eventually meet up in person. During this whole process, the matchmaker also serves as a dating coach. So they provide coaching before your video date, post video date. So it's really the kind of anything you need or any blind spots that you may have that your coach could also call out. And that's really how the process goes.
Wow. Wow. And so with, I gotta imagine that this, like, it looks like it was just really good timing too, launching this thing in January 2020. And a big shift happened, and everybody was, home and online, and I mean, and so this just really took off for you guys. So what is your vision for the company from where you're at? And I know this is going to be a constantly evolving thing, but with where you're at right now, what do you see for the company going forward from here, Zach?
Yeah. So our goal is to continue to serve as a dating app for one.
Okay.
So you don't have to use the matchmaking service. The system will send you matches. And if you both like one another, you coordinate a video chat. The matchmaking service allows you to get into the front of the line. It's curated, it's vetted. You'll lead to more dates. The vision is for everyone to have the ability to either to find love ultimately. And we do that by offering this matchmaking service that's democratized where people can afford it. Because traditionally, matchmaking services are quite expensive, $6,000 a month or
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. I remember
So we
those.
want to, yeah. And listen, I mean, it's warranted. I mean, they help you find love and the ability to meet the person of your dreams. I mean, $6,000 just, I mean, again, it's all relative, but for some people, $6,000 isn't that much to find love. But if you're 6 months in with your matchmaker, that money adds up. So we just wanted to give everyone the ability to find love in a really curated fashion and leverage video as the medium to get to know the person and not just message back and forth.
Yeah. Very cool. Very, and you're right. You can pick up on so much more in video than you can in text messaging for sure. It's just way more intimate. I mean, it's the video is just, that's the next best thing to being together in person and stuff. So Well, okay. So now that we've got a little bit of context set, I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to reiterate the question around relationships for the benefit of the listeners. So, Zach, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And Zach, I'm just really excited to hear your story, your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah. Firstly, that's a really good question. The answer is yes. I've had a number of individuals over the course of my life that have shaped me who I am today. I would
Okay.
say more recently, it's probably been 2 or 3 years now. One of my closest friends, Stefan, who runs a business, very successful SaaS webinar company called Webinar Kit, has been very important. And aside from him being a very close friend and someone who I love dearly, has helped me a lot to grow my business
Okay.
when it comes to like direct response marketing and shaping our matchmaking service to what it is today in a way that people can understand it clearly and to just continue to run the business and grow it and bring in revenue. So he's been quite valuable in helping me and coaching me to help us get where we are today, specifically around the matchmaking
Okay.
component.
Okay. Okay. And so, and I know you mentioned there might be another couple, one or two people that you wanted to talk about as well. So I want to make sure we give you time to do that. And then I'll circle
Yeah.
back with some follow up.
Yeah. I mean, this is not someone who introduced. I mean, family. I mean, my upbringing, like, was a very strong upbringing. My mom, my dad, and brother. I
Okay.
would say my brother was quite influential in helping me become or pushing me to become entrepreneurial and having me think differently.
Okay.
Um, when I was younger, I was actually quite shy. And to approach someone new was really difficult for me. And he challenged me by saying, or gave me the opportunity by saying, listen, like, you want to get past this? Like, do some like leadership work, some personal development on yourself. And I ended up taking a course called Landmark Education, and that
Ah,
was extremely impactful in my life. I was 18 when I took the Landmark Forum, and I took a few other courses in Landmark, and I took a few other courses outside of Landmark as well, and really helped me get to where I am today. And I would say my brother, as well as that course, kind of gave me the confidence or the ability to be like, oh, I'm going to start my own company like now versus like waiting until someday, like once I have enough experience, once I'm at a certain point in my life. And I think that's like a sad way of looking at life. Like I could do it. I mean, granted, if you want to be a doctor, you have to go to medical school. There's a process. But for many things, a lot of it is like mindset and the willingness to fail.
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think it gave me the aside from the confidence, it helped me get myself out of the way from saying like one day, like once I make enough money or like once, but there is never a good time. And that's what I realized. There's really never a good time for anything, usually. It never works out as well as you think, like smoothly. It often takes a different approach than you ever anticipated.
Yep.
And I think that's the beauty of just like being on the court and trying and failing. And this is not my first startup. I've tried startups before that did not work out. And they're like, it's so painful that it's like going through a breakup. Um, so yeah, I definitely credit my brother for challenging me and pushing me. I think as a sibling, I would say sometimes he challenged me not the best way, but I guess that's what siblings do. Um, Sometimes a bit of what brothers do. But yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, I thank him a ton for what he helped me and helped me become today.
Yeah. So is your brother an entrepreneur, Zach? Does he have his own?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he lives in Austin. He runs a financial advisory fund.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. So I'm curious because you brought up a couple of things. Um, so you mentioned how when you were younger, you were really shy. And when I was younger,
Yeah.
I was the same exact way. And so would you have, when you were younger, defined yourself as an introvert? And also now, would you do you look at yourself, or are you still feel like you're an introvert, or would you say that you're now an extrovert? What does that look like for you, and how has things shifted as a result of all these things that have taken place in your life, and being a part of Landmark and having those experiences?
Yeah. I mean, nowadays I consider myself an extrovert.
Okay.
When I was younger, I didn't really think in that way. Maybe I didn't know introvert, extrovert when I was like really young.
Probably
But
not.
like
I mean,
I
not.
yeah. So I probably just I always label myself as shy. Especially like more so meeting new people. If I already knew them, I wasn't shy. Like I had no problem talking to them. But the fear of just meeting someone new, just like putting myself out there, and I didn't know why it was hard. I think that was the most frustrating experience was like I wanted to. There's some people that don't want to, and I get that, and that's fine. But for me, I wanted to put myself out there, but I just there was like something holding me back, and I couldn't do it. And it was like painful. Um, painful for the point of like, why can't I? And like also painful to the point like where like I just didn't even want to be like looked at. It was just so it was like this double-edged sword. I was just felt stuck. So when my brother told me about the course, I was like, sign me up. Like I didn't even ask for information.
Yeah.
I was just like, I'm doing it. So yeah, I mean, so yeah, I remember after doing the forum, I mean, literally instantly, I started feeling like a different person. And I remember there's actions I would take. I was like, whoa, a week ago I wouldn't have done this. And that was
Oh,
cool. That was like they like it was like mind blowing. Like these little like mind blowing. Now it's like it's been so long. I'm 33. So it's been 15 years since I've taken that course
uh-huh.
or the first course. So it's not like you kind of now think of yourself as a certain way. So a lot of those in the beginning, it was like fun and new. We're like, whoa,
Yep.
I couldn't. But now it's like you almost forgot what you used to be.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you have conversations like these, that's when it comes back up. Or if you meet someone from your past, they reminisce with you and things come up. So you're not really thinking on it on a day to day.
Totally.
Um,
Totally.
so yeah, I think that's how I've been
Yeah.
or how I've changed or shifted as a human.
Well, and I'll tell you the reason I asked you that, Zach, was completely self-serving because when you shared, I was like, wow, that's exactly how I used to be. When I was younger, I was extremely shy. And like the introvert, extrovert, that wasn't even on my that was even part of my thought process back then when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
But I did know that I was incredibly shy. And I had an experience at youth group one time. I was at a church youth group that I used to go to. And I remember sitting there and thinking to myself, man, you know what? You being this way is not serving you. And I see other kids who are not being shy and they're interacting with other kids and having all these conversations and stuff. And I'm like, so I was sitting there in that youth group meeting and I made up my mind when this meeting is over, I'm going to go over there. I'm going to walk across the room and I'm going to go talk to this girl, Ann. And Ann was like the head cheerleader on the cheerleading squad at school, and she was the popular or one of the popular girls, and so that was out of my comfort zone a little bit. But I'm like, I'm just going to do this, and I did. And Dana, we just didn't have this conversation, and then now, as a result of that, at school, we would have just interaction together, and I'm like, holy cow, that wasn't a bad experience at all. And I just now, my gosh, I now I love talking with entrepreneurs. I love finding out about what they're working on, how they're doing it, what problems they're up against, what opportunities they're trying to take advantage of, and I'm just this naturally curious guy. In fact, sometimes it kind of bothers my wife because she's like, "Man, you ask so many questions," you know. But it has served me so incredibly well over the years. And like I said, if I was an introvert, I don't know, like you, I definitely was shy, but I ain't no more. I'm not anymore. I am a total extrovert now, and I don't know honestly if you can go from introvert to extrovert, or if maybe you were an extrovert all along. Who knows? And really, who cares? But it's an interesting process and I have not been to Landmark myself, but I have had friends who have gone to Landmark, and everybody who's ever talked with me about Landmark has said that it was a life-changing experience for them, for sure. And so those guys are definitely doing something powerful. So if we look at even just these two relationships here, if we look at your relationship with Stefan, your relationship with your brother, and I want you to kind of look back over the years, and I'm sure you'll be able to come up with a lot of examples. And I just want to challenge you when I ask you this question, just the first one that pops up top of mind for you. And so if you look at your relationship with Stefan and with your brother, and over the years, look at where an opportunity where you got to make a really big and substantial impact, and you also know that hands down that would have never happened if not for your relationship with Stefan or your relationship with your brother. What is an example that just pops up top of mind for you when I ask you that question?
Yeah, sure. So I did a TEDx about probably like 5 years ago.
Okay.
And that would have not been possible when I felt quote unquote shy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that definitely changed my life doing that TEDx. For one, I spoke to like in front of like 1,000 people, something that in that moment, it was probably the most anxiety inducing moment of my life. Being in the green room for like hours waiting for my turn to present without a teleprompter and sharing my story. It was a story about a friend passing from mental health and then me raising money and starting a project. But it was really just like about the audience, which is like you too can make a difference with the relationships that come into your life. That was kind of the ethos of the talk. But yeah, I would have never been able to give that talk. And then after the talk, man, I felt like I was the top of the world. Like people came up to me and they were crying and they're like,
wow.
It was just like human connection,
yeah.
But it also gave me confidence. And this was probably like 6 years ago. So on occasion, I still have these things when I do something and I was just like, whoa, like I would have never been able to do that. Or like, whoa, that was monumental. And those definitely happen less often than like after I did, let's say, Landmark, where like every day I was like, whoa, there's something new that I wasn't able to do before. But back then it was like smaller things. Now I would say I'm probably doing bigger things that are impacting more lives versus just impacting my life. So yeah, giving that talk was super important, gave me confidence, and it also gave me the confidence of like doing something that really went outside my comfort zone, and everything worked out.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
For the most part. So yeah, and it made everything else seem a lot less scary after that talk.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
like things weren't as intimidating as they may have been before. After you do something crazy, things just occur for you as less scary.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was
and
a
you
really
had the experience.
monumental.
You have the experience, and you're like, oh, well, that wasn't so bad. And in fact, that was actually kind of cool. Look at all those people that came up and spoke with me afterwards and told me how, wow, that was really impactful, Zach. And like, man, it makes you feel good. And
For sure, but it was tough. Oh my god,
yeah,
like to go through that again is like, I don't really want to go through that again. It was really like, whoa, like, yeah, those types of public speaking occasions at like a massive scale, they're really just like anxiety. Even now, they're really anxiety inducing for me
Are they?
and
Yeah.
tough. I mean, yeah, I'll do it
Yeah.
if it's going to A, be important for my company, or B, help other people. But like, I love it, but it's just like it occupies my mind like nonstop. Like the practice for your script, like for the TEDx, just practicing and getting
Yeah.
ready, and just like, what if I mess up, and those fears. There's just like a lot on your mind. So like, I don't love them, but doing it after, it's amazing. But like the preparation to it is just like, it's grueling.
Yeah. Do you feel that a lot of your feeling around this, and even like, I don't know that I want to do that, do you feel it's because that, okay, if I'm going to do this, I want it to be valuable for the people that are there that I would be speaking to? Do you feel a lot of that is stems from that? No.
No, I think it's just the hesitation always is, wow, this is going to occupy my mind. This is going to be like really the only thing. So that means it's going to take away kind of from everything else.
Okay.
And then it's
Okay.
also this fear of like, what if I mess up? Like, it's just like anxiety
Yeah.
inducing. And
Yeah.
then naturally, if I do something like this, I'm going to practice and work really hard. But I'm never really thinking like, is this going to be impact? Like, I'm just like, it's going to help people. I'm going to make it work. Like, I will it. Like, that's not really the concern. My concern is like, for the TEDx, like, am I going to forget my lines? Am I going to, like, yeah, just you're, oh, and I remember before the TEDx, I was practicing every day in the shower, like all the time in the car, just like nonstop. So it really does just take up your mind
Sure.
for like
Sure.
a couple of months.
Yeah. 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 I have done presentations in the past, not a lot. I've done a few. In fact, the very first one was in November of 2003. So, man, time, no, wow, 20 years ago this month. So, and there was about 500 people there. And first time I'd ever done that, and I was to give a 60-minute presentation. And fortunately, it was a warm audience. A lot of probably about a quarter of the people there knew of me, and so that was helpful. But yeah, it was. I remember leading right up to that, and I was just so dang nervous, and had never done anything like that before, but and like you, I mean, I to this day, 20 years later, I've only done that a handful of times, and but it's all right. It's all right. It was a good experience, and that experience 20 years ago launched a company for me and stuff that I had a good run, and actually led me into the work that I get to do today. So not a lot came from it.
Yeah,
A lot came from it. So all right,
for
well,
sure.
I want to make sure. I mean, Zach, for anybody listening to this and going, man, Kev, I really like Zach. I like how he's just I like the way that he shows up, man. And how can they find out more about what you guys are doing, and any resources, any websites that you want to share? I want to make sure I give you the opportunity to do that stuff.
For sure. So for business, if you're interested, if you're single, looking for love, the app is Filteroff. It's available on iOS and Android. It's free to use. We also have a matchmaking service. So on our website, getfilteroff.com, you can learn more about the matchmaking service. If you want, we're also on all the socials. If you search for Filteroff, I'm also on Instagram, Zach, ZACH 08590. And I share a lot about my life and kind of what I'm up to, professionally and personally. So I like to be pretty out there and sharing. But yeah, and I'm just online as well. My first and last name, ZachSchleien.com. But yeah, it was a pleasure giving me this opportunity. And yeah,
Yeah.
thanks so much again.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation, Zach, and just I really love the way that you show up and just keeping it real, and am excited to get this out there and share it with a lot of other entrepreneurs and CEOs. So thanks again. Really appreciate it, Zach.